At first glance, it all seemed like a tragic accident. A carbon monoxide detector went off in the middle of the night, and hours later, a devoted wife and mother was dead. But 3 years later, investigators began asking a question that changed everything. What if this wasn't an accident? What if someone had turned the family home into the perfect murder weapon? This is the story of a death that has divided investigators, experts, and juries for years. On September 4th, 2006, tragedy strikes the Wangler family home in Lima, Ohio. In the middle of the night, the carbon monoxide detector starts beeping. Dr. Mark Wangler wakes up thinking there's a house fire, but soon realizes it's poison gas. He goes upstairs to check on his wife, Kathy. He finds her unconscious, begins CPR, and immediately calls 911. Despite the efforts of paramedics, Kathy dies a short time later at the hospital. At first, it all seems like a ridiculous accident. Carbon monoxide is colorless, odorless, and tasteless, and similar tragedies happen every year. The police find no obvious suspect, and the case seems closed. But as time goes on, questions begin to arise. Investigators return to the house again and again, examining the air ducts and trying to figure out exactly how the gas got to Kathy's room. Gradually, a theory emerges that this may not have been an accident, but a carefully planned murder. As the investigation continues, Mark gradually tries to rebuild his life. She finds solace in the church and in her old family friend, Esther Erkman. The two had known each other for years, and fate brought them even closer when Esther also experienced a severe personal loss. The friendship gradually grew into a relationship. 14 months after Kathy's death, the two married and began a new life. But while Mark believes the tragedy is in the past, the prosecutor on the case never stops doubting. One detail continues to haunt him. The night Kathy died of carbon monoxide poisoning, Mark slept in a room with an open window and a fan running. Prosecutor Jürgen Waldick is particularly suspicious of Mark's behavior during the emergency call. Mark claims to have found Kathy unconscious, but only after the operator insisted that he return to check if she was breathing and had a pulse. To Kathy's relatives, this behavior does not seem like a panicked husband. To them, the man who is trained to put people to sleep as an anesthesiologist committed a murder that at first seemed like a perfect accident. Before her death, Kathy Wangler was a beloved wife, mother, sister, and friend. Her loved ones describe her as a helpful person, a strong lover, and always there for people. She is the oldest of 5 children in a close-knit family in Ohio. She married Mark when they were both young and worked to help him complete his medical degree. Later, she returned to college to earn a degree in business and became actively involved in community life. But behind the outward appearance of a stable family, her marriage to Mark began to fall apart. After their sons went off to college, the two drifted apart. Mark admits that they slept in separate bedrooms. He says the reason was Kathy's loud snoring, but that wasn't the only problem. Mark was annoyed by the way Kathy spent money. According to him, she had accumulated about $60,000 in credit card debt that he did not know about. He also opened a separate bank account with $16,000 taken from their joint funds. This seemed to be a sign that Kathy was preparing for a more independent life. Kathy's family, however, sees other signs. Her sister Joan witnesses a disturbing argument between the two, in which Mark and Kathy literally fight over a checkbook. The incident shakes her so much that she asks Kathy if it's safe to leave her alone in the house. Kathy replies that she'll be fine. Soon after, she began telling loved ones that her marriage had hit rock bottom. According to friends, she felt financially, emotionally, psychologically, and socially destroyed. A year before her death, Mark told Kathy's mother that her daughter was a monster because she didn't do what he told her. When the mother proposed a divorce, he replied that he could not because he had seen how expensive it had been for other doctors. Kathy was also afraid of divorce. She told her sister that if she left, Mark would stop supporting their sons financially. In the summer of 2006, the tension grows even stronger. Kathy tells friends that Mark is trying to destroy her. In one of her last conversations with Professor Rodney Null, she says that you have to be careful when someone is trying to destroy you. 3 days later, Kathy is dead. At the beginning of 2007, several months have passed since her death, which still officially appears to be an accident. but her family does not believe it for a day. They are convinced that Mark is responsible. When the police investigation seems to be stalling, the mother and sisters decide to act alone. Their idea is simple: to keep the enemy even closer. During this time, they observe his behavior after Kathy's death. According to them, he fakes crying, quickly gets rid of her belongings, tells different versions of her death, and shows no interest in where she will be buried. On the way to the cemetery, he even makes an inappropriate joke. Convinced that something was wrong, Kathy's mother contacted the sheriff's department and warned that if the family didn't get answers, she would go to the media. Shortly after, the case was assigned to experienced investigator Clyde Breeden. He started the investigation all over again. He conducted dozens of interviews. What really killed Kathy? Was it the water heater? Was it a problem in the house? Or was it someone using the house as a weapon? Breeden quickly realizes that Mark and Kathy's marriage was far more broken than it first seemed. Mark's story of a faulty water heater begins to fall apart. Gas company employees check the water heater, furnace, and fireplace. They find no serious malfunction. This increases suspicion. Even stranger is Mark's behavior. If his wife really died because of a faulty appliance, it would be logical for him to be furious and seek responsibility from someone. The investigator focuses on one important fact. Mark is an anesthesiologist, a person who works with gases and knows their effect on the human body. His medical colleague says that Mark was well trained in working with gases and had a good understanding of how carbon monoxide works. Thus, the main theory emerged. The carbon monoxide did not come from a faulty water heater, but from a mobile source, a car, a generator, or a camper. According to police, the gas may have been introduced into the house through the air duct system and directed to Kathy's room via a hose and a running engine. The defense categorically rejects this theory. The lawyer claims that there is no evidence of a hose, no gas residue, and that the version defies logic. According to them, the real explanation is a faulty vent in the water heater, which trapped the gas in the house. But the police do not accept this. 3 years after her death, Mark Wangler is arrested and charged with murder. From a respected doctor, he is transformed into a man many see as an evil genius. While awaiting trial, Mark continues to maintain his innocence. He denies putting carbon monoxide into the house. 4.5 years after her death, the trial begins. The prosecution claims the motive is clear. A divorce would ruin Mark's reputation and finances. The defense counters that it's a case built on poor police investigation and shaky assumptions. The jury hears the recording of the call. The prosecution emphasized that Mark, as an anesthesiologist, should have immediately checked the vital signs. The defense explained his behavior by possible poisoning. Mark himself was confused. However, the prosecution claims that the resuscitation was just a show because the body was already cold. The prosecution shows photos of Kathy's room with soot marks above the air vent. They claim this proves the gases were being introduced and that Mark had sealed all the other vents. But the sons testify that these marks had been there for years because of burning candles. Investigators are unable to examine the stains because Mark painted the wall later. The prosecution presents Mark's diaries, discovered after a tip from Kathy's mother. The notes reveal tension and deep problems. Mark writes that Satan has found his weak spot, his marriage. In court, the diaries reveal his most intimate thoughts. He describes what he wants her to change: cooking, cleaning, and losing weight. The notes become increasingly dark. Mark writes that he feels trapped and sometimes rages. He claims he wrote this on the advice of a counselor to save the marriage. To the prosecution, the diaries show a buildup of anger and religious obsession. In one entry, Mark mentions car exhausts. 3 days before his death, he wrote a prayer, asking God to act in a powerful way. To his relatives, this sounds like an excuse, but the prosecution still has no direct evidence. How exactly was the gas introduced? The prosecution cannot pinpoint the source. The defense insists that there is no scientifically sound theory. In conclusion, the prosecution again analyzes Mark's behavior and his desire to take a shower in a house filled with dangerous gas. The defense argues that if the gas came from an engine, there should be an odor, which was not detected. The case goes to the jury. On the second day, the jury reaches a verdict. Mark Wangler is found guilty of aggravated murder. The judge sentences him to life in prison. Kathy's mother tells him bluntly that he took her daughter's life and destroyed the family. Mark's new wife continues to believe in his innocence. For Detective Breedine, there is no victory. Kathy is dead, and her sons have lost both their parents. The story of Kathy Wangler ends up being one of the most controversial cases. There is no weapon, no obvious witnesses, just a house full of questions. For some, Mark is convicted on circumstantial evidence. For others, he is a doctor who turned his home into a weapon. Thank you for being with me. Like the video and subscribe.